The Zelkari Dominion was the most powerful force in the galaxy, its war fleets stretching across countless star systems. Their conquest was unstoppable, and no species had ever challenged their might. That was, until now. On the edge of their latest invasion corridor, deep in the void of uncharted space, an unknown warship appeared on their sensors. It was massive, with a hull density that scanners struggled to analyze. It emitted no identification codes, no response to hails, nothing but an eerie silence. To the Zelkari, it seemed like an abandoned relic floating in the dark, but something about it felt wrong. High Command dismissed the anomaly, sending a small patrol fleet to investigate and, if necessary, destroy it. They expected no resistance. After all, no single ship could stand against the Dominion. The moment the Zelkari warships entered range, the unknown vessel moved. It was slow at first, like a predator sizing up its prey. Then, without warning, it struck. Its weapons fired with inhuman precision, its cannons unleashing a fury unlike anything the Zelkari had encountered before. The first 3 ships exploded before they even had a chance to react. Panic spread among the fleet as officers shouted for evasive maneuvers, but the ship was too fast, too ruthless. It danced through their formation, avoiding fire with impossible speed for a vessel of its size. Plasma beams and kinetic rounds rained down upon it, but its hull absorbed the attacks with terrifying ease. Every move it made was calculated, as if it had studied their weaknesses for years. Reinforcements arrived, dozens of warships prepared to overwhelm the lone vessel. Yet, the unknown warship adapted. Its weapons adjusted their targeting patterns, striking at critical points in the enemy defenses. A single volley from its cannons disabled an entire battleship, rendering it helpless before tearing it apart in the next blast. The Zelkari admirals, once so confident. This was no ordinary ship. It was something else, something far worse. Then, for the first time, the warship sent a transmission. A single message, repeating over and over in an ancient, long-forgotten language. The Zelkari translators struggled to decode it, until one officer, deep in the archives, recognized the words. His face turned pale as he whispered the translation, "Humanity has returned." A name long thought to be nothing more than myth. Humanity, the species that had once fought the entire galaxy and disappeared without a trace. The Zelkari had dismissed them as nothing more than a legend, a cautionary tale told by the older civilizations. And yet, here it was. A warship unlike anything in recorded history, carrying the banner of a species they had assumed was extinct. Fear gripped the Zelkari as they realized the truth. This ship wasn't just attacking them, it was hunting them. The Dominion sent everything they had. Hundreds of warships converged on the sector, determined to end this nightmare before it spread. The battle raged across the system, and for a moment it seemed like sheer numbers would finally bring the warship down. But then it revealed its final weapon. A beam of unimaginable energy erupted from its core, slicing through the enemy fleet as if they were made of paper. The flagship of the Dominion, the pride of their entire empire, was obliterated in a single shot. What little remained of the Zelkari forces scattered, desperate to flee. The unknown warship did not pursue. It simply waited, as if daring them to return. The last surviving admiral, his voice shaking, sent out a distress signal to every major power in the galaxy. His warning was clear: humanity is no longer extinct. They did not die. They did not vanish. They prepared. And if this lone ship is any indication, war is coming. The Phantom Dreadnought, its mission still unknown, drifted silently once more. But now, the galaxy knew one thing for certain: humanity had returned, and they were ready for war. The Galactic Coalition had ruled unchallenged for centuries, their fleets dominating every known sector. Humanity was a name whispered only in the darkest corners of history, a species that once waged war against the entire galaxy before being wiped out. The records spoke of their defeat, their fleets shattered, their homeworld burned to ash. To the Coalition, they were nothing more than a forgotten enemy, an old war long buried in time. But everything changed the moment a distress call echoed through deep space. At first, It was dismissed as a malfunction, an outdated frequency from an era long past. But then came the reports. A lone warship had appeared on the edge of Coalition space, tearing through border defenses as if they were nothing. No identification codes, no demands, only destruction. The Coalition, accustomed to easy victories, sent a small task force to intercept it. They expected a damaged relic, something that had survived in the void by pure chance. Instead, they found something impossible. The warship was ancient, its design matching the long-lost records of old human battleships. Its hull was scarred, its surface worn by centuries, yet it moved with deadly precision. The Coalition ships opened fire, confident in their superior technology. But the moment their weapons struck, the warship retaliated. Its cannons roared to life, unleashing energy so powerful that the first wave of attackers never even had a chance to scream. The Coalition fleet was torn apart in seconds, their shields useless against the overwhelming force. The survivors barely had time to react before the warship vanished into the darkness of space, leaving only wreckage in its wake. The news spread like wildfire. Panic set in among the high-ranking officials. If this warship was truly human, then what else had survived? Desperate to contain the threat, the Coalition assembled an armada. Hundreds of ships gathered, the largest fleet in generations, all to hunt down a single enemy. They tracked the warship to a barren star system, surrounding it from all sides. Victory was certain. Even the greatest human warships of the past could not stand against such overwhelming numbers. But as the first shots were fired, the Coalition realized their mistake. The warship fought not like a cornered relic, but like a predator unleashed. Every shot it fired struck with ruthless efficiency, tearing through the enemy ranks as if it had fought this battle 1,000 times before. It anticipated their movements, countered their formations, exploited every weakness. The battle became a massacre. Coalition ships fell one by one, their mighty fleet reduced to scattered wrecks floating lifelessly in the void. A desperate plan was formed. The warship had no escort, no reinforcements. If they could disable its engines, they could board it, take control, and finally uncover the truth. A squadron of elite Marines launched from the remaining Coalition ships, breaching the warship's hull with careful precision. They expected an automated system, a lifeless vessel controlled by an old AI. Instead, they found something far more terrifying. At the heart of the warship, connected by cables and machinery, was a man, his body frail, his face aged beyond recognition, yet his eyes burned with unyielding defiance. Commander Elias Grant, the last surviving captain of the human war fleets, had fused himself to his ship, keeping it alive long after his crew had perished. His mind had become one with the warship, his consciousness controlling every weapon, every maneuver. The warship was not just a machine. It was his body, his vengeance, his purpose. The Coalition soldiers hesitated, realizing the horror of what they faced. This was no rogue AI, no forgotten relic. This was a warrior who had refused to die, who had spent centuries planning for this moment. And as they stood frozen, Grant spoke his first and only words: "You took everything from us. Now I will take everything from you." With a single command, the warship's core activated, sending out a transmission across the stars. The Coalition scrambled to intercept it, fearing the worst. Their fears were justified. The signal was a set of coordinates, leading to the unknown regions of space. And then, before they could react, the warship's weapons came to life once more, erasing the boarding party in a blinding flash of light. The survivors fled, their fleet broken, their spirits shattered. But the true terror was yet to come. As the Coalition leaders analyzed the transmission, their faces turned pale with horror. The coordinates led to an empty region of space, long thought to be devoid of life. But now, hundreds of new signals were appearing. Warships, thousands of them, activating after centuries of silence. The last human warship had not been fighting alone. It had been the signal, the harbinger of something far worse. Humanity was not extinct. They had been waiting. And now, the war was about to begin again. The Urdax Imperium had ruled the Orion Arm with an iron grip for centuries. Their fleets were unmatched, their armies vast, and their technology far beyond that of any other species. No enemy had ever challenged them for long. Those who resisted were crushed, their civilizations erased from history. The galaxy had learned to fear the Urdax, and they believed themselves invincible. But then, a message arrived, a distress signal from an outpost on the outer rim, filled with static and screaming voices. The transmission cut off abruptly, and when a scout fleet was sent to investigate, all they found was wreckage. Dozens of Urdax warships had been torn apart with unnatural precision. No survivors, no escape pods, no signs of struggle. It was as if their fleet had simply ceased to exist. And in the debris field, floating among the ruins, was an unknown warship, motionless, waiting. Imperial High Command dismissed the incident as a pirate attack, or a malfunctioning AI refusing to believe that any single warship could pose a threat. But then, the attacks continued. More fleets went missing. Patrol routes fell silent. Entire colonies disappeared overnight, their defenses obliterated without a trace. Panic spread through the Imperium, and soon the name of the unknown warship was whispered in fear. Every engagement followed the same terrifying pattern. No warnings, no negotiations, only destruction. The enemy ship never spoke, never responded to hails. It attacked without hesitation, without mercy, without fail. The Urdax finally acknowledged the threat and launched an armada to hunt it down. Hundreds of warships spread across the sector, scanning every system, setting traps, preparing for battle. Then, one fleet found it. The unknown warship was waiting, motionless in the void, as if daring them to strike first. The Urdax commander, believing in his overwhelming numbers, ordered an immediate assault. The fleet fired everything they had: plasma cannons, torpedoes, kinetic rounds, but the warship moved with inhuman precision. It dodged fire before it was even launched, weaving through their ranks like a ghost. Its weapons ignited, and in moments, the Urdax fleet was reduced to burning wreckage. The few survivors, barely escaping in emergency pods, reported the same chilling detail: the ship fought with unnatural efficiency, as if it could predict their every move. Desperate for answers, the Imperium's top scientists studied the wreckage left behind. The fragments of enemy technology were unlike anything in the known galaxy. But one horrifying discovery stood out above all others. The ship's design matched ancient human war vessels, a species long thought extinct. Further analysis revealed the most terrifying truth: the warship was unmanned. It was not piloted by a crew. It was an autonomous human AI executing a forgotten directive. Somewhere in the depths of its programming, it was still following orders from a war long past. Then, a long dormant transmission was intercepted, a message repeating over and over in old, forgotten human code. When translated, the meaning sent shivers through the Imperium. Engagement Protocol Omega activated. All hostile forces must be eliminated. The realization struck the Urdax like a death blow. Humanity was not gone. They had never been defeated. They had simply prepared. This warship was not acting randomly. It was executing a pre-programmed mission, one set in motion long ago. The Imperium had unknowingly triggered it, and now it would not stop until its objective was complete. It was not just a ship. It was vengeance given form, an echo of a war that had never truly ended. And if one such ship had survived, how many more were out there? The Urdax launched one final desperate assault, throwing their mightiest fleet against the rogue warship. They surrounded it, jammed its transmissions, cut off all escape routes. The battle was brutal, stretching across the entire star system. The AI warship adapted to every strategy, countered every formation, tore through their ranks with terrifying precision. It took an entire planetary bombardment just to disable its shields. But just when the Urdax believed they had won, the warship's core activated. Before the Imperium's eyes, a final transmission was sent, one not directed at them, but at the void itself. The coordinates were encrypted, the message unreadable, but the intent was clear. The warship had called for reinforcements. As the last Urdax flagship attempted to retreat, sensors detected movement at the edge of the system. One warship had been an unstoppable nightmare. But now, There were dozens, hundreds, hidden in the darkness, waiting for the signal to awaken. Humanity had returned, and the real war had only just begun. The Vrax Dominion had ruled the galaxy for millennia, its empire stretching across thousands of star systems. They had crushed countless civilizations, turning entire species into servants of their ever-expanding war machine. To the Vrax, history was simple: only the strong survived. And they were the strongest. Or so they believed. But buried deep in the ruins of an abandoned sector, in a system long forgotten, something began to stir. A signal, weak and distorted, echoed across the stars. At first, it was ignored, dismissed as background noise from a dead world. But when a Vrax patrol fleet ventured too close to the system, it vanished without a trace. No distress signals, no wreckage, only silence. Alarmed, the Dominion sent a larger fleet to investigate. What they found was something they could not comprehend. A massive structure, hidden beneath the surface of a barren planet, had begun to power up. Ancient machinery, untouched for centuries, roared back to life. And at the heart of it all, a warship unlike anything the Vrax had ever seen emerged from the ground. It was colossal, its armor worn but unbroken, its weapons systems blinking to life with a slow, deliberate menace. The Vrax fleet, arrogant and confident in their superiority. But the warship did not even flinch. Its shields absorbed the attacks effortlessly, and then it retaliated. The first blast from the warship tore through the Vrax fleet like a blade through paper. Entire battleships disintegrated in an instant. The survivors tried to flee, but the ship was merciless, moving with precision no modern AI could match. Within minutes, what was once a proud fleet was reduced to nothing but debris. The warship did not pursue the few ships that managed to escape. It simply remained there, its systems continuing to activate, as if awakening from a long slumber. And then, it sent out a transmission. Across the galaxy, the signal spread like wildfire, its encoded message deciphered by only the oldest archives. The words, though ancient, carried a chilling meaning: humanity endures. Stand by for retaliation. The Vrax Dominion had heard tales of the humans, a species that had once been a threat before vanishing into extinction. The official records claimed they had been wiped out, another failed species that dared to challenge the Dominion. But now, those records were in question. If a single warship had survived, what else had been left behind? The Dominion wasted no time. An invasion force, the largest in their history, was assembled to crush this threat before it could grow. Thousands of ships, the deadliest the Vrax had ever created, descended upon the planet. The battle that followed shook the heavens. The human warship fought alone, but it was as if an entire fleet was hidden within it. Every attack was countered, every formation broken. The Vrax poured their firepower into it, determined to overwhelm its defenses. But the ship adapted, its weapons shifting to counter each new wave of attackers. It was not just a machine, it was a survivor of a war the Vrax thought had ended. For hours, the battle raged, until finally, the Vrax managed to land a devastating blow. The warship, battered and damaged, seemed to falter. Victory was within reach. But then, the ground beneath the planet cracked open. Dozens of new signals appeared. More warships, buried deep beneath the surface for centuries, began to rise. They had not been destroyed. They had been waiting. Panic spread through the Vrax fleet as they realized the truth. The humans had never been defeated. They had gone into hiding, sleeping beneath dead worlds, waiting for the moment to strike back. And now, that moment had come. The once forgotten warships, each as powerful as the first, turned their weapons toward the Vrax armada. The counterattack was swift and brutal. The Vrax, once so confident in their strength, found themselves outmatched, outgunned, and overwhelmed. Their mighty invasion force was annihilated in minutes. The few survivors fled back to Dominion space, their minds filled with horror. They carried with them a single message, a final warning transmitted across every known frequency. The words were clear, undeniable, and terrifying. The sleeping giant has awakened. The war is not over. And across the stars, In forgotten places where no empire dared to venture, more signals began to activate. The human war machine had been sleeping, but now it was fully awake. And this time, there would be no mercy. For centuries, the XLRA Dominion ruled with absolute power, their fleets spreading fear across the galaxy. Their conquest had been swift and brutal, leaving only ruins in their wake. Among the many species they had crushed, one name was almost forgotten: humanity. According to Dominion history, the humans had fought harder than any enemy before them, refusing to surrender until their homeworld was turned into ash. The records claimed they were extinct, their fleets shattered, their people erased from existence. The galaxy believed this truth. But belief is not always reality. It began with an attack unlike any before. Axelari's stronghold on the edge of the Empire went silent overnight. When scout ships arrived, they found nothing but wreckage. Not just destruction, obliteration. The planet's defense grid, orbital stations, and warships had all been reduced to twisted metal. There were no survivors, no distress calls, only one haunting clue left behind: a transmission repeating on an old, forgotten frequency. The language was ancient, but its meaning was clear: Operation Retribution is in motion. Panic spread through the Dominion ranks. A force powerful enough to wipe out an entire stronghold in one night was a threat they could not ignore. They mobilized their fleets, sending warships to hunt down whoever was responsible. At first, they found nothing. The enemy did not attack like pirates or insurgents. They did not leave trails to follow. They struck from the darkness, disabling communications, shutting down defenses before the victims even knew they were under attack. Within days, 4 more military installations were annihilated. The attacks were precise, almost surgical. The Dominion finally caught a glimpse of their enemy when one fleet survived long enough to transmit a single image: a warship, sleek and deadly, its hull marked with an emblem no XLRA had seen in generations. But to the Dominion's oldest warriors, the sight sent chills through their bones. It was a human battleship. The realization struck the XLRA leadership with dread. Humanity had not been wiped out. They had disappeared, waiting, planning. And now, after centuries, they had returned not as survivors, but as executioners. Desperate to contain the threat, the Dominion gathered its grand fleet, tens of thousands of warships forming the largest armada in history. Their orders were simple: find the enemy. Destroy them before they spread. Then, the battle that would change history began. At the edge of Dominion space, the XLRA fleet finally cornered the enemy. A single human warship hovered in the void, motionless, waiting. The Dominion's admirals hesitated. Could this really be the force that had destroyed so many of their strongholds? But when they moved in, the trap was revealed. From the darkness, hundreds of warships emerged, silent, precise, ready. The humans had never planned to escape. They had lured the Dominion's grand fleet into a perfect ambush. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships moved like predators, anticipating every maneuver, tearing through the XLRA ranks with ruthless efficiency. Their weapons were beyond anything the Dominion had encountered, striking with devastating force. The Dominion, used to crushing weak enemies, had never faced an opponent like this. They were not fighting rebels. They were fighting the ghosts of a species that had refused to die. Hours passed, and the once mighty Dominion fleet was reduced to burning wreckage. The few surviving ships tried to flee, but humanity had no intention of letting them escape. One by one, they were hunted down, their transmissions jammed, their cries for help silenced. No one would come to save them. The last XLRA ship was reduced to rubble. The final transmission from the human fleet was sent across the stars. It was not a declaration of war. It was a sentence, a warning to the galaxy. The debt is due. Retribution has begun. And across the void, more human warships began to awaken. The war was far from over. It had only just begun.